go. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Rob Romanowski. I'm the Director of Sales Operations with 3HTI, and welcome to our workshop today regarding model-based definition and Creo's GD&T advisor. So what we're hoping to do with this workshop is to have an interactive session where you can ask questions. You don't have to be on mute. I can unmute you. You can mute yourself. But this is supposed to be an interactive session. So as Bill Drosos, one of our technical advisors, is going through this presentation and the actual solution itself, you can ask questions and kind of learn, get in a little more into the weeds about what this how the solution can work and help you model better and faster. So without further ado, Bill, you have the con. And I'm going to allow everybody to talk. If I hear background noise, I'll mute you quickly. But we thank everyone for being on.
Hello, guys. It's Bill here. Can you hear me? Rob, can you be good?
Yeah, I hear you great.
Okay, great. What I'd like to do today is, talk about 3D G&T, or like Rob called it, model-based definition. And what I really want to get across is how it really improves communication across design, manufacturing, and quality. Because, aside from just being able to throw a dimension on a 3D model, right? There's a lot more importance than that, right? When it comes to communicating your design intent across your teams. We'll also talk about the GD&T advisor. This is a great feature, and this actually is great for people who aren't really strong with GD&T, or just need a quicker way to get to their end result so that their parts can be manufactured correctly. Okay, so I guess I'll just dive right into it. All right, so let's first go to Creo here. So the first thing that I'm pulling up is this connector bracket, and you can see that we have the 3D model, we have dimensions, and we also have some notes here in the viewing area. But towards the bottom, sorry, you also see that we have tabs set up. Okay, these different tabs allow us to cycle through different combination states of dimensions and datum tags and just information that's been applied to this model. So for example, there's a map tab, right? And this basically shows us the profiles, the primary envelope, the mounting holes, but there's also these notes right here. There's a properties note, a notes, and there's a GD&T datums. And the great thing about this is that it's all hyperlinked. So if I select the properties link, for example, I can say open URL, and this takes me to that properties tab at the bottom. Okay, so before we get into the technical things like, that are simply just adding a note or dimension to a 3D model here in Creo, I just wanted to show you that there's a lot of information that, you can add to your environment here in Creo so that when it's shared, people get the information that they need. Okay, so all these tabs at the bottom, all these combination states were created using the view manager, and there's an all tab, and you can see that this all tab in the view manager contains the same tabs that we saw below. And if I go to edit, for example, edit definition, you can see that a combination state is made up of an orientation, actually a combination of an orientation, a simplified rep, even a cross section if there's one, an appearance, layer states, right? So you can combine all that information from the view manager into one combination state. Okay, but we have a variety of them here, as you can see, and I'll close it out. So that's how these were created. So initially, we just have the model here, and to get to the MBD environment, we have to click on the Annotate tab at the top of the Creo ribbon. And then from here, you can see that we have a list of tools. We have the annotation planes. So when it comes to adding a dimension to a 3D model or a note, you can specify which plane you want to view that on. So for example, if I hover over this front plane, you see that green grid show up on the model, showing you that front viewing plane. There's a top plane and the right plane, for example. Okay. We also have the dimension feature, which allows us to apply dimensions just like you would in the 2D drawing environment. We have the geometric tolerance composite frame feature right here to add to our dimensions. We can also add datum feature symbols and notes like you can see here. So to start out, just to simply see how the simple tools work here, we can use the dimension tool, and we get a reference collector that shows up basically asking us, how we want to specify the dimension. So in this case, we have the surfaces option selected. So for example, if I want to get a dimension from this surface to this surface, I would hold control, select both of them. And you can see because I have that front viewing plane selected, it's going to place this dimension on that front plane. I just middle click to place that there. Okay, now a couple things to mention here. So if you want to display your tolerances and specify them in this environment, you want to make sure that you have this config option created. So if I go to my configuration editor here, you can see that there is a tolerance display option, and that needs to be set to yes. Okay, so if that's set to yes, then you could go in here and modify this, right? So for example, if I wanted to add a symmetric plus and minus limits here, I can do that, and I can modify the tolerance values here in that tolerance group in the top right, okay? I can bring that back to nominal as well, okay? I can also add a tolerance frame to that, right? So I can grab that guy, and then you can see it's now calling out these different datums. So I have my datums A for that surface, B for that surface, and datum C. Okay. Now, one thing that I want to show is all the references that are associated to the dimensions and the datum tags are semantic. So for example, if I select this dimension here, you can see it highlights the references that dimension is associated to. If I go into the reference window, we can see them here. Okay. You may be wondering why there's a strong checkbox that's selected. So if that checkbox is not selected and there's an adjustment to the model, it's going to try to automatically select a surface reference to accommodate that change, no matter what the change is or how severe that change is. If you use strong though, and you select that, it's going to specifically look for the reference that you originally selected for that feature. And if it breaks, if reference breaks, it'll show you that, and then you'll just have to redefine it. Okay. All right. So this is a note here. I can add a note if I go to my annotate tab and add a note right here. I can drop in a free note on the top plane if I want. So right now I'm on the front plane. I can add a note here, place it. Right. I can also add a note to the top plane. Choose that top reference. Like that, right? And then you can see here that we have a different color for this heading. So I can adjust the, text style if I want, the color here. I can change that to green if I wanted. I can adjust the height. I can adjust the font, the slant angle, right? So if I want to, I can change that height from 8 to 5 and hit enter. So now I've changed it from purple to green, and I've changed the font size here. Okay, so that's how we got all the notes and dimensions on this model. And then of course there's the datum tags. Those are applied the same way. So in the datums tab right here, we can see that we can add a datum symbol like this. Now we already have one, so I don't have to add that there. We already have one for that surface, so I'll delete that. And notice, again, that's all semantics. So that reference, that datum tag B, if I select on the reference tool, the window shows up showing that reference is that back surface. Okay. Now, how does this all tie in to production and quality? Well, if you've heard of Creo View before, which is a 3D model viewing application created by PTC, you know that it allows you to open up a 3D model. So if I switch over to Creo View right here, you can see that I was able to import the PVZ file. So in Creo, you can export a PVZ. I can show you that really quickly. Like when the file, save as, save a copy, and I'm finding the PVZ file type. So once you save that, you can open it up within Creo View, and there's a different combination states just like we have in Creo. Properties, notes, datums. So as you can see, this is the power of doing all of your GD&T in the model with that model-centric approach, because now when you do that, anybody in the company can view this model, right? You can share this. This could be in Windchill, right? If you use Windchill, there would be a PVZ file that's associated with the part file, and it could have all these dimensions in it. If somebody needs to view this on the shop floor, they can pull this up on a computer just to make sure that they have the correct dimensioning schemes and tolerances and datums that are needed to manufacture the part the way that it needs to be. All right. Now, there's a couple things that you have to do to enable this, because out of the
Hey, Bill,
box, yeah,
can I like to tell people that Creo View is, you can do anything to this model that you can do with Creo except create geometry or modify. So you can
yep,
view, you can interrogate, you can make notes, you can
exactly.
redline, you can mark up. It's a total collaboration tool. If you have Windchill, this is built in. All of this functionality is built into Windchill. So when you check this part into Windchill, this is automatically viewable to you and others in Windchill that might not even have Creo. So when something is checked in the Windchill, you don't need the authoring app. You can see everything if you have permissions to see it. All right, that's it.
Thanks, Jim. No, that's a great point. So maybe there's a manager or there's an engineering team lead or something that needs to view the model. Like Jim said, you can easily come in here and mark things up. So say for example, for strength or something, they're worried about the size of that radius. Well, they can easily just grab a leader note and select that guy and say increase size, right? So now that person knows, that CAD engineer knows that they have to increase the size of that radius, right? And you can save this. So I would go to File and save my annotation sets, save the markups, so that when the engineer is in Windchill, they'll actually get a notification saying that the Creo View file was updated. So they'll open up their Windchill environment and it'll say, hey, there's been an update. And then they can see that their manager added a little note to this telling them what to do. Okay. Now, out of the box, if you create a really nice setup like this where you have all these combination states below with all the product information, you can see here we have the model name, description, the release level. All these parameters here that are in the model parameters can be used here, right? So if you do all this work and you set this up and you save your PBZ file, it won't come into Creo view like this with all those combination states and all this information exactly like you see it in Creo. There's a couple steps that you have to do to make that happen. So I have this notepad opened. So the first thing that you want to do is make sure that you have a couple of these config options added and set. So we have the state type, which is the MBD type. Then we have the second line down here, which is for a recipe file, and this is the path to that file. And you can see that the actual file is called export PVS underscore MBD. All right, so this is commonly where you can find that. That's in the program files, PTC, Creo directory, common files, text, product view, right? And as long as you set this, and we'll just take a look at that recipe file right here, this shows basically 0 is no and 1 is yes. So if you want your datum planes to come in, have 1, your axes 1. If your annotations, the all state annotations want to come in, you put 1, right? So if you want all this stuff to be included when you export your PBZ from Creo and open it up in Creo view, you want to make sure that all this stuff is set to 1. So once you do that, I'm going to come back here to Creo for a second. When you go to File, Save As, Save a PVZ, you go to Options. Once you add that config option, you'll see the recipe file path for the MBD, which is right here, the export PVS MBD, okay? So that's what you need in order to get exactly what you've defined in Creo here, your annotation states, to show up within Creo view. Okay, this is Creo view MCAD, so this gives me all the functionality that I can get out of Creo view. I believe every seat of Creo comes with Creo view Lite, which will at least allow you to open up the model and view it. I also want to talk a little bit about something called Creo Illustrate. So this is a great tool, and this basically allows you to create work instructions from your assemblies, right? So in order for me to get all that data, just like it is in Creo, to Creo Illustrate too, I have to have the recipe file set up like I showed you. And you can see here that, you know, this allows me to create different figures from my work instructions, right? So there's my figure 2, figure 3, figure 4. There's even like these animations that you can set up if you want. That's very like primitive, but just wanted you guys to see that you can do that. So, and what's nice about this is that if you create your work instructions in Illustrate, you can actually link the Creo Illustrate file to the CAD assembly, so that if any changes are made to that part or that assembly within Creo, you'll get a notification here that there was a change, and it'll update all of your figures that you created for your work instructions with those changes that were made in CAD.
A lot of people use this for work instructions for the shop floor. People use this for communication to customers. We have people that design heavy equipment, and they're able to illustrate the motion of the heavy equipment and machinery in Creo Illustrate in a very lightweight environment that they can communicate over the web to customers. There's just a lot of different things you can do with Creo Illustrate as well. So.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jim. Okay, so now I want to move to the, before I do that, I also want to talk about this for a brief second. So everything that you do in here, so if you create your annotations in here, your tolerance frames, composite frames, all this stuff, right? Any of this data that you create here can be brought into a typical 2D drawing within Creo. So let me switch to that right now. So this is a drawing, and all I did was import the front view. And if I select it, all right, you can see that I've selected some of the annotations, composite frames, right, directly from what I created in MBD. All right, there's even notes here. If I wanted to bring in more notes, I can do that too. So just wanted to kind of dispel that myth, because a lot of people are like, okay, well, if I do all this work on the model, adding these dimensions and tolerances and datums and all that stuff, what good is that to my 2D drawing? Well, what's good about it is that it's associative. So anything that you do in the 3D environment, right, you can populate into the 2D environment, right? So it's not really like you're doing exactly double the work. You're able to reference the work that you did in the 3D model. Okay.
And you can have multiple sheets with different stuff on the drawing.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So if I want to add another sheet right here, I can pull in another view. I can even pull in a combination state, right? So I can pull in one of the states that I showed you in the model, or I can do a new one, click here and say, hey, I want to grab that right view, for example, then change the scale. Then again, I'm showing those datums from the model. There's datum A, right? And if I want to, I can pull in more. I can say, hey, I also want to pull in that dimension and select it, right? Or I want to pull in this note, primary envelope, right? Just to show that and pull that stuff in. Okay. Okay, so let's, also I want to talk about this a second. I think it's important to note. So when it comes to choosing the standard that you want for GD&T, if you go to File, Prepare, Model Properties, and scroll down, you see that you have your tolerance standard. So if you want, you can always change that, right? Right here, there's ISO, right? So that's possible to do. Now let me switch to this cover part here. Okay, so now let's get into the GD&T advisor a little bit. The applications tab in the GD&T group, and I'll select it. So what's great about this is that this tool is very intuitive. So it basically guesses what you want to do as far as like tolerancing a model based on what you've selected, the references that you've selected. And then what's nice is it also shows you, it provides you helpful information in the advisor tree to the left. So for example, if it finds an error, if there's something that you have to fix, it'll highlight it here and you can make that change. It'll actually give you notes. It'll say, hey, your previous tolerance was this or something, that this one has to be less than that. Then you can go in there and change it. It'll show you if your model is, fully constrained or not. So it's pretty easy to use. So for example, to get started, I would just use this tolerance feature and select it. And you can see I get that window that pops up here. And basically I say, okay, I want to start with this surface to define this. And based on that selection, it's going to show me what feature it thinks I want to create. So it says, hey, you want to use this planar surface. I click OK. And then based on that selection, you can see it also provides me with some options. So it's suggesting what's in green. So it says, hey, you're probably going to want to use flatness here. Okay, so it'll highlight that in green, and then you can change that tolerance here. And if you want this to be a datum feature as well, if you want to add that datum feature label, you can select that and then green check mark, and there it is. All right, so we just keep on doing this. So now it says that the DRF is not referenced, and that's because we don't have all the datums in there yet that we need, but we will. All right, and then next I'll add the cylindrical surface here. Then you can see that it says, hey, I see that as a shaft, and it highlights the surfaces that make up that cylindrical surface, and there's numbers. All right, and I can click on these, I can drag them up, like that. I can move these around. I can grab that, move it to the right side if I want. All right. And you can see right now, I can define this if I want to say, hey, I want to add maximum material condition or least material, or, regardless of the feature frame, or sorry, regardless of the feature size, I could do that as well, like that. And I can always go back in here and make changes too, which is nice. If I click that and I'm like, hey, you know what? I need to add something. I can always go back in there, select it, and go to edit and make my changes. And again, you can see that it's looking for perpendicularity right here. So it suggested that for me. Okay. And then now we're going to go ahead and add this top surface, planar surface. All right. And that's going to be, that'll just have A. I'm not going to add that datum there. And that's going to be 0.1. And I can add another one right here. I can query select that surface and this one. And notice that when I do that, it says, okay, I see a gap between these surfaces. That must be a slot. So it's pretty intelligent here. I can go back in here. There's A, B. And if I want to add, let's add C to that as well, and then change that to 1. So there's my datum feature right there. There's my positional. Now, I've defined a few of these, right? But you can see it says some surfaces of the design model are not constrained, right? So if I go to my show hide constrained state, it'll highlight in green what's constrained, and anything in gray is not constrained. Very easy, very, very nice to see. It'll also recognize patterns. So I can go to my tolerance pattern and I can say, let's add one, and select that surface. And it's a simple hole, and I've said add the entire pattern, and I'll click OK. And it shows all 3 holes. And again, I'll move that up. I can highlight it here a second. Okay, so now I've got these in here, A, B, C. That's good. I can add an additional composite segment below, down here, and for this one, I just want A. So I have my ABC for those datums at the top. Now I have A down below, and we change these to regardless of feature size. Okay. And there it is. Okay. So I'm going to bring over another example that I already started, just so I don't have to go through all these with you, because it's kind of pointless to do that when I have it set up here. So what I wanted to show you were some of these errors that pop up, right? So what's nice is that in the advisory tree to the left, it's showing me that I have 2 errors. It says the tolerance value must be smaller than the value specified on the previous segment. And it shows the same thing. And the great thing is that when I select that note, it highlights it in the graphics window as well. All right. So this needs to be smaller, so I can select it. And I can go in here and actually select it from here and edit it, and just change that value to 0.05 and hit OK. All right, and you can see now I just have the 1 error, which is right here. Okay, so now I can go in here and change that one as well. I can say, hey, let's change that value, and that solves that problem. Okay, so now I don't have any errors or anything showing up in the advisory tree. And if I click on my show hide constrained state, you can see that everything is fully constrained. Okay. Now, if I go to my part and edit the properties in the part, you can see that it's using the ASME. But if I would have just gone back before, I could have changed that here again, right? If I go to prepare model property, scroll down and change my tolerance standard. Okay, so yeah, so the goal of this was to kind of show, that all the, geometric dimensioning and tolerancing that you apply to the model, if you use that model-centric approach is very powerful, right? Not just because you're able to create dimensions or annotations and notes on the model, but because all this information can be shared, right? It can be shared in Windchill and opened up in Creo view and, marked up by another engineer or even yourself, just as notes to yourself, like, hey, I think I should change this. Let's go back and rework it. This PVZ file can also be shared to Creo Illustrate to create work instructions for the shop floor. There's actually some companies that I know that are getting completely away from 2D drawings and going to this MBD approach, and it's worked out well for them. A lot of them say, hey, when we send a drawing to somebody, we always have to send the model too. So it just makes sense for us to, just use the model, because at the end of the day, that's what's being critiqued, right? That's what's being measured. So hopefully you guys have seen, the power of using this and are thinking about how to incorporate that into your workflow. All right, Jim, not sure if you have any comments or
No, good job,
anyone else on
Bill.
the call?
Good job, Bill. Anybody have any questions, comments? I will say, while people are thinking about questions, this is definitely being driven heavily by the U.S. Department of Defense and defense contractors as well. They're really pushing this as standard and getting away from 2D drawings.
Right. Yeah, more and more companies that I've talked to are getting away from 2D drawings. How about Mark? Any comments?
Excellent job. I do have a prospective customer on the phone, not to put him on the spot, but he doesn't have prior experience with Creo, and they're in the process of making a purchase. So I'd be eager to hear his feedback. Doesn't need to be broadcast here. I'll give him a follow up there. I do see he's on, so I'm glad he joined, and I'll get some feedback from him, unless you want to share it now. But I'll share his feedback later in the day. They are out in the West Coast. He's an early riser. I'll give him some credit. Thank you for joining.
Nice.
Okay, yeah. So hopefully this was enough to get your wheels turning as far as how to incorporate this model-centric approach with dimensioning. If you want to learn more, of course, feel free to contact any of the guys on the call that like Mark, Jim, and Rob. If you want to see this more in depth, maybe even if you're curious about how this can be used on your own parts or assemblies, we're definitely open to having that conversation. So just want to thank you guys for joining today and hope you learned something.
Bill, thanks a lot, man. You did a great job as always.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Real quick, Rob, everyone will get a recorded link of this demo, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. See you guys.